Calvin Paleka is a Kapaʻa boy, tried and true. He was raised in Anahola. He's a 1987 graduate of Kapaa High School after serving a mission in Japan for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He graduated from BYU Hawaii. Soon after, he took a teaching job at Kapaa High School, and he's been a fixture in the classroom as well as on the football field since 1993. Here's my conversation with the most famous man in Kapaʻa, Calvin Paleka. All right, we are here with Calvin Paleka, a legend in Kapaʻa for sports and for teaching and many other things, most of them legal. But welcome, Calvin, and thank you for being my first guest of the Kauaʻi Sports Page podcast.
All right. Awesome.
But yeah, Calvin, I wanted to start off by just asking you, like, what are your earliest memories involving sports? Like, what kind of sports did you play? What did you watch on TV when you were growing up? Those kinds of things.
So I grew up, I remember fondly, when I was 12, there was a Super Bowl on TV between the Dallas Cowboys and the Denver Broncos. And I asked my dad, "Hey, Dad, who's your favorite team?" He goes, "Oh, the Dallas Cowboys." And so ever since then, I've been a big, humongous Dallas Cowboys fan. And everyone that knows me knows there's only one black truck with a Dallas Cowboys in the back. And not too many months after that, I kind of remember watching an NCAA basketball game. And it just was random. And it was Indiana State with Larry Bird against Michigan State's Irving Johnson. And I remember watching Larry Bird, and I'm like, hey, you know what? Whoever get drafted in becomes my favorite team. And so we went going to the Boston Celtics. So I liked him. Growing up, there wasn't too many sports. I grew up in Anahola. I mean, if you're not from Anahola, you never played for the Anahola Rainbows or the Dodgers, you're not really from Anahola. There was a soccer wasn't really big yet. I really didn't play sports, organized sports, until I got to high school. In high school, there wasn't that much opportunity, so I just played football. There was no JV at the time, so I had to wait till my sophomore year. I was kind of on a small side, so I played football for 3 years in high school, and then I ran track, and those are the two primary sports that I played. Eventually, when I got into my teaching, those are the two sports that I wanted to coach when I came back.
So you never really, I mean, you played a little bit of like community sports growing up, or
yeah,
not
and
too
that
much?
was, the thing about it too was interesting. Like my dad was always working after school. My parents were both teachers, and so when my dad would go work, my mom didn't have a license, couldn't drive, so there really wasn't that much sports. And basically, soccer wasn't really popular. I think AYSO just came out, but the only teams that had soccer teams were out in Wailua. It didn't come out to Anahola until after I got into high school. But there was basketball leagues, but that was all in Nihui, Kapaʻa, and my mom just couldn't drive us there. And so I never really played organized sports until I got to high school. And that was the only thing I kind of wished. Yeah, I wish we had more opportunity. There's more opportunity now to play sports, but the only things I remember doing that. Yeah.
All right, interesting. I remember actually growing up and probably being in middle school and seeing, I believe you were number 41
That
for
is
Kapaʻa.
That is correct.
And tell me what position you played and what kind of player were you?
So yeah, that was funny. 41, yeah. So when I started playing football, only reason why I stayed with 41, that was the only number when I sophomore year that was available left. So I started at flanker, but then I ended up playing defensive back. And then my junior year, under Wayne Watanabe, he coached 3 years. But my junior year, there was some coaching changes, and there were two coaches actually. One, the former Cliff Bailey, the late Cliff Bailey, who was the elementary teacher, and one Coach Kitomura, Kara's father. They both came, and I learned in a running back position from Coach Kitomura, but I really learned defense from Coach Bailey. Kind of took me under my wing, kind of showed me the game within the game, and it really stuck out to me. So I worked really hard at those positions. I was fortunate enough to make all. I mean, it wasn't hard to make all-star here at KF. We don't need 3 teams, but I made it my senior year. That kind of gave me an opportunity to think that I might have an opportunity to play college sports. There wasn't that much opportunities, but it did plant the seed. I did have some friends of mine that after graduation, many of them went to North Dakota to play football up in Marist University. My parents just told me, nope, too far. We're going to go to BYU Hawaii. So that's the route that I took. So I never played sports, unfortunately, after high school. So I did have an opportunity. I was thinking when I came back to play, but ended up getting married. So that was the end of my playing days.
Interesting. So tell me, when you played sports in high school, what lessons did you learn from playing sports?
I'll tell you what, first thing I remember was just the great brotherhood and the friendships that I made. A lot of them got into coaching. One of them, a good friend of mine's Coach Sean Aguano. He was 1 year younger than I. We played ball, and he made the ranks. Went to Linfield, won a national championship there, and then I'm going to, I believe, he had a tryout with the Canadian football team, and basically, I was at Kapaa for a few years, moved to Arizona, did a bang up job at Chandler High School, and currently now running back coach at Arizona State. So a lot of the friends that I made in football, even other teams at Kauaʻi High and High School, a lot of them were just, I think it was just a great game. I remember I was coached some pretty good coaches, like I mentioned with Coach Bailey and Coach Kitamura. They kind of planted the seed in me that perhaps maybe, because I always had an idea to come back and be a teacher at Kapaa, but I never thought the idea of being a coach. But they planted that seed at a very, very young age. So that brotherhood, knowing people, and unfortunately, I've trained my children that the only color that we bleed in our house is green. That color, and so I've been thankful for my time that I played here, and now had opportunity to coach and continue to coach here now.
Great. So tell me, you said you didn't really plan on coaching, but obviously you come to Kapaa High School as a young teacher. How did your coaching career start?
Oh, that is a very good. So, oh man, this is hopefully my wife doesn't hear this podcast later. So what happened was I was in college. We were in school still yet, and I happened to come home for the summer in 1993. This was just before, the year after the hurricane. I came home for the summer, just real quick, and I bumped into two of my former classmates, one Dawson Cavallo and one Sean Aguano. And they were saying that, hey, and I was planning to come back in the fall to student teach. My wife and I were going to student teach here at Kapaa High School. We're coming back from BYU Hawaii. And they said, hey, you coming back? Hey, we need one more coach on the JV football team. You know, coach. And I went, yeah. Now, unfortunately, I didn't discuss this with my wife. So I gave my commitment when I was here. And so we went back. We had Shannon in July, our oldest child. We had Shannon, and literally, like, the day we moved back to Kauaʻi, we just unpacked, and I remember putting my shorts on and my hat. And I told her, oh, by the way, honey, I'm leaving for football practice. I kind of just left it at that. She kind of like, what? Football? And I kind of left, and that was the beginning of the end because I'm still coaching football. And funny story with that one is that I never really prepared my wife to be married to a football coach or any type of coach in high school. So I remember I did football in the fall, got bamboozled to do track in the spring. And then right after track was done, I changed my clothes in after school, and then I was headed out the door. My wife goes, where are you going? And I said, oh, I'm going spring football. I'm going to football practice. She goes, in May. And I looked at her and go, oh, I didn't tell you about spring football. And so that was her indoctrination or introduction, I should say, to marrying a football coach that pretty much our program went all year round and stuff like that. So that's how I got into it. Yeah.
So tell me, how many years have you been teaching and how many years coaching? I'm assuming it's the same amount.
So I started, so my year around the sun in Department of Education is in October of 1993 is when I started teaching. Some of you listening to this podcast probably wasn't even born. I started with football. Then when it came to spring, because when I was here, the athletic director at the time was Dwight Fuji. And so he was our AD when I was in high school. But when I came back, Joe Kakatian was the head track coach. So when I came back, I said, I'd like to help volunteer. So I started JV football in 1993 volunteered to coach in 1994, and then in the fall did football again in 1995. I was the head coach at Kapaa High School, track and field. This year, October, will be 33 years. So I've done football. I took 1 year off in football, 1 year off in track. So I've done like 32 years in track and football. And so currently right now, I still assistant with JV and assistant with the varsity football program, but I'm still the head coach at Kapaa High School track.
Wow, that's quite a long coaching career. So
Yeah, it is.
I guess that begs the question: why do you still do it?
Honestly, when I first came, because I just enjoyed playing football and track, and I heard it said many, many times the hardest place to watch a football game is on the sideline, but it's close enough that brings back memories. You just like, how did I stay in teaching so long? Just because I've enjoyed it so much. And I've had opportunities to jump ship and join administration. But instead of Hawaii, if you join administration, you can't coach any sport. And so that was one of the things, every time it presented to me, I just would miss it a lot. And so the other part of it, obviously, and is anybody who has coached, is just the amount of friendships and athletes that you meet along the way. And it's sad. It's kind of funny, not sad, but it's funny because like I've always said, hey, with this freshman class, as soon as they graduate, I'm going to be gone. And I said that before my kids came through Kapaa High School. My kids came through, coached them all, and I'm still, like, good example. My niece graduated last year. It's okay, after she graduates, and then they had a really good ninth grade class. And so as long as they start producing good athletes at Kapaa, that's when I'll stop coaching.
So one thing I kind of wonder with the football, obviously Kapaa High School over the last decade or so has been very successful, not only on the island but also recently with state championships. But for a lot of those years, I would say probably
you can say the word dark years.
Yeah,
dark years,
the doldrums.
Yeah,
I would say probably for 2/3 of the time you've been coaching, Kapaʻa had some very rough seasons, quote unquote losing seasons.
Yes.
What was that like going through that time
Man,
period?
I tell you what, going through that, I remember watching film some nights, and my wife is like, "Why are you watching film?" "Oh, I'm trying to get better." But it doesn't work because every time you watch film, right, it's not working. And I always felt, an unfortunate part, we've had some really good athletes, even in those years that weren't winning much. And I remember how, as a community, and I'm just going to say it as my opinion, I just think football is big on the island of Kauaʻi. And, a lot of people, might not take academic scores seriously enough, but man, football is king. You can hear it in community. You'll hear it at the coffee shops. You hear it at Portal Market, whatever. And I remember it was a struggle. It was a rough, 2/3 of my coaching career, because it just became a habit, kind of like, once you start losing, and it just became that. But that all changed the year we had Coach Morgado come, kind of like lay the foundation of what a successful program looked like. Because it took him for years to build it, right? The amount of time you got to commit, and then get the right coaches to also believe in the program. That once he set that, precedence, he was here for about 7 years, and I was fortunate to be with the Portuguese Mafia himself, Coach Philip Raposo. We had success there. We ended up going to the championships. And then it became, Coach Tressler comes in, brings in, more of his expertise and knowledge that just kind of got us over the hump. And a lot of times people would say, the road to football, used to go through Lahaina and Iolani. I think, McCaig said it our last one, the championships now at Kapaa, will now go through Kapaa High School. And the thing about it is, I remember this happening. As soon as football won and started winning, it was like this domino effect. And all of a sudden, we were always a soccer school. We were always a volleyball school. But then things like softball, baseball, I remember just other sports taking on. Once we started winning, football started winning. That whole mindset of the community and the school just kind of changed also. And so I always felt that once football, not saying football was the answer to all our problems of the world, but it made a big world of a difference in terms of school and community pride and spirit and stuff like that. And to the point where, it also permeated into the classroom because we're telling our athletes you won't make it to the next level or you won't make success if you can't do it in the classroom. So it's been a great long transformation, and people tell me all the time, "How come you're still coaching?" Because we're winning now. I should have quit when we were losing, catching cracks back in the day. But yeah, winning does a lot of things, and I've seen the positives not only on the athletic field, but also seen it, for kids going to college. Not only football; it's all the sports that have been very, very successful over the years. The championships that the boys soccer, girls softball, boys volleyball. In all those, whether they've won championships or been to the championship game. The Kapaa has been put on the map with that, as well as our academic stuff that we do here at Kapaa.
Very good. So let me ask you this then. You've been coaching football for 32 years. If I was to ask you what are the top 2 or 3 memories you have from football over that time, what would they be?
Well, I think the biggest one, and I'm not going to say it just so happened, when Coach Morgado, we were finally building it to win the first KIF championship. And I remember my oldest son, Jonathan, he was kicking for the JV. And they brought him up just for the last 2 games. And the other kicker just was having struggles with PATs and stuff. Anyway, so in the game, as they were going, the decision was, hey, if we're going to go for the winning kick, that they were going to put John in. And I remember because that was a championship game. We haven't sniffed the KF championship games in years. And so, matter of fact, it was on my wife's birthday in 2011. And it was a Tuesday, and he kicked the winning field goal. We just called it the kick in our house. And that probably was a big win in our program. That was probably was first and foremost in my mind. The other one was when we won our first Division II championship. That was actually the first for the island. And that was on a rainy night with Coach Tressler, him coming and, working towards that. We're just coming out of COVID also at the same time. And so it was a great segue for us. And then I think another big part of it, it's not really on the football field. It's just a lot of the community service projects that they do, with the walkathon that Coach Phil did every year. And so a lot of the kids have volunteered their time in the community. So, as much as the community supports us at the football games, we try to give back also with the program. So there's probably a couple of things that have stuck in our mind and are proud of our football program is done here in Kapaa.
Yeah, I am stoked that you mentioned the kick heard round Kauaʻi by Jonathan Paleka, because I remember being in the stands and
that's right,
and as a lifelong Kapaʻa fan and athlete myself, I remember that day, and I remember you on the sideline praying to the
right. There's a video floated on YouTube.
Praying to all the gods that he would hit that kick. So that was a great memory. You did mention the Division II championship, and how has that changed sports, especially for the schools on the neighbor islands, right. School like Kapaʻa. For years when we were in high school, right. We would go to the state tournament and we would just get clobbered by the Punahos right. and the Kamehamehas and all those schools. But now with Division II, how has the Division II changed the landscape of sports?
It's kind of funny you mentioned that, because one of the many hats that I wear here at the high school is assistant athletic director. So working with your brother, Gregorian Chance Gonzalez. That was a big question. I remember going to athletic Hawaii athletic director meetings, and that was brought up to bring Division II to get more parity among people. I remember there was a lot of pushback, that they don't want to share in the revenue. But I think when they allowed Division II and they saw the success of it, so many other schools have been a byproduct. Like, good example, Kohala basketball. When would Kohala ever been able to chance? Maui Prep, all these charter schools, smaller schools. It's also permeating from the success of football. It's gotten down to cross country. It's gotten down to other sports where every school now has an opportunity to go for a championship. So I think Division II, and more specifically for our league, we only have 3 football teams, but everyone knows now that our league, even though these got 3 teams, they're hammers, So us moving up to Division One actually opened up the way for Waimea and Kauaʻi High to have two representatives. The year we went to D1, Waimea won back-to-back Division Two state championships. So it just goes to show that, even we have three, it's very competitive. And even when we compete in Division Two, we have shown, and not only for our school, but even Waimea and Kauaʻi High, when they go, they just show the competitiveness of the kids from Kauaʻi, that they can shine on the big stages, everyone else, that they also belong in the state.
Yeah, that's glad you mentioned that. I mean, because Waimea also, they've been able to win some state championships. Kauaʻi High School in baseball,
and air rifle and stuff like that. Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I wish, and I'm sure you agree with me. I wish that when we were in high school there was the Division Two, because for us back then it was kind of like, hey, you win KIF and that was it. Like nobody really expected you to go to Oahu or the other islands and do anything in the state tournament, but maybe consolation championship. But it's really exciting, and I think that's something maybe the younger generation, they don't really realize they have today, right?
And I think too is like you're right, and you're exactly right. And then back at the time, there also wasn't that much schools, and like Waimea High School in the heyday under John Kobayashi, they ran 10 years. I believe if they had a Division Two program, then they would have rolled the state. Because when they would go, they played Kahuku, they played Kamehameha. They just played all the bigger schools. And so it just kind of made sense now. And then, just to give everyone an opportunity. But, I do tip my hat off to people. Like my sister, Sheree, and Auntie Val and Alice, when they went to the state tournament, I believe they played Puno at the championship game. They ended up losing. There was
in soccer.
I think they won a girls softball championship, and they played with D1. And the thing about it is, I think at the time it's just the amount of talent right here at Kauaʻi comes and goes, right? It's a generational thing. But now I think with year-round clubs and volleyball, basketball, whatever, and with the type of athletes and opportunities the kids have, man, I think every kid on Kauaʻi has an opportunity to shine in any sport that they do. And especially now with paddling and air rifle, all these other sports that don't take the notoriety of the big sports, that everyone has a chance now to have an opportunity to shine.
So we're kind of winding down here. I did want to ask you, so over the 32 years or so that you've been involved with high school sports, what has changed in sports, maybe in the athletes or just what has changed? Has anything changed?
It's funny. That's a very good question, man. That could be like another podcast, for another day. The changes that happen in athletics. One of the things that I found too is like for a long, long time, you'd see coaches stay in the sport for 20 years, 30 years. Like, Coach Wendell who's at Iolani High School, retiring after 30 Wendell Look, sorry. Yeah, even Coach Wendell also was at IAEA, right? All those years. You don't see that now. I don't think you see that anymore in high school sports. I think right now in our staff, I think Kapulika Ono, I don't think anybody on our staff is longer than me on it. Right now, I would dare say, I think Coach Kara, maybe 10 or 15. Plus I just don't see the longevity. It's kind of hard it's like anything else. Recruiting good coaches is like recruiting good teachers, so that has changed. I think the mentality of youth nowadays, if they have drive, then the other one's just kind of like, like, what is it? Mental fortitude, whatever you want to call it, or even just resiliency. When things get hard, don't quit. Oh, I don't want to come to practice, or they don't want to put the time in, to go and stuff like that. So I think this is another challenge why a lot of coaches come and go, because of the lack of the commitment of the kids. But for those kids that are committed, for those kids that do come, for those kids that continue, they may not be the most talented kids. For me, I coach track, and we have some kids that just come every week. They come and try hard every day. And even though they might be state champions, but as long as they're beating their own personal record and stuff like that, that's to me the biggest gift that I can see as a coach, to see kids just get better every day on the field. And so, yeah, but we need more coaches, bro. It's like they need more referees and more teachers and everything else. Like, I don't want people to come in, take our places, because like I look around back myself, I don't see anybody banging the doors down to be teachers here at Kapaa High School, bro.
Okay, well, that's been great stuff. I got one last question for you. Okay, a few years ago, there was a meme circulating across the world.
Yes,
The world.
the World Wide Web. Yes,
It was essentially a picture of you. Right. And some people thought, hey, is that Kim Jong Un? No, actually, it was you. And it said, if you don't know this guy, you're not from Kapaʻa. And I know a lot of people listening will remember that meme. But let me just ask you in closing as we end here. What did you think of that meme? What kind of things came about from that? But then also, seriously, what has it meant for you to be associated so much with your alma mater, Kapaa High School?
Right. Oh, that's a very good question, man. Thanks. So to this day, I don't know who made the meme. Honestly, I really don't. Before I die, I would love to go find out. So if anybody out there who made that. So basically, that's like about 15, 20 years ago. If you go into our counselor's office, this is a huge one. At the bless her heart, she passed away. Auntie Nelly Okomoro and Auntie Joan Kialaleo blew it up, and it's right inside their office. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about that meme. So we have a family that was here on Kauaʻi. They actually moved back to the mainland. They were actually in Minnesota at a mountain retreat in the land of 1,000 lakes. And they happened to bump into a student or a young girl, and she had Kapaa Warriors on it. And they were mentioning, like, what do you know about Kapaa High School? And he was like, you're not from Kapaa. So she's like, okay. And so basically what they did was try to use the meme. So what sports did you play? And the girl goes, I ran track. And then this nigga's like, who's your track coach? She goes, oh, the legend himself in his own mind, she said. Coach Calvin Paleka. So funny you mentioned that because this year is actually, in October, will be 33 years that I taught here. And, my wife, and I got maybe 2 more years left, winding down. And so I've had time to reflect on my time here. And then, I kind of look around like, holy smokes, man, where did the 32 years go? And so all my children are getting bigger. I have 3 grandchildren. I have 3 grandchildren now. And in my classroom, I'm just looking like 80% of my kids are taught their parents. So it's a good sign. It's been a good ride. I'm still coaching. I still feel young. I've been very blessed in my life, and not only being a teacher, but for all the relationships that I've had. I've been blessed. It's been awesome, being here and associated with Kapaa High School, graduated from here. All my children graduated from here, so we go 3 generations deep. My parents were Kapaa Elementary School teachers for all those years, and so we rooted, bro. Go Warriors!
Well, Calvin Paleka, thank you very much for that, for sharing all those experiences.
Stroll down memory lane.
I've shared with you this before. The day you retire from Kapaa High School, I will lead the committee on trying to get a statue erected for you here at Kapaa High School. Hey. And as I've told you before, all we need to do is we need to just ask Madame Tussauds Museum for the Danny DeVito. We'll ask for the Danny DeVito mold, and we could easily, I'm sure, our building and construction students would be able to crank that up. Calvin, thank you very much for Mr. Paleka. Thank you very much
brother. Anytime, this is free.
Sharing all of this with us, and I really enjoyed, especially a lot of the mentions. You mentioned a lot of great names in the podcast today. So until next time, we bid a fond aloha.